Good afternoon, dear viewers, dear participants. I am Fabien Miclet, and I'm very happy to welcome you all to the second online event organized by the Arena Resilience Alliance, a game of two halves, the return leg. Last December, we got a unique perspective on the many challenges facing the ecosystem of live events due to the exceptional crisis we're all going through. This afternoon, I will be joined by a fantastic lineup of speakers hailing from the worlds of sports, culture, and public decision-making to discuss how we can collectively mobilize resources, energies, and talents to prepare for the return of live events. Today, you will hear from a wide range of voices and hopefully get a glimpse of how the live events industry is preparing to rebuild a strong, resilient, and safe sector with a key driver, confidence. You will probably hear this word a lot today. Confidence in the future, customer confidence, confidence in safe operation models, and also confidence in the relationship with public authorities. This event is broadcasted live from the Arena Resilience Alliance YouTube channel, but also on the socials of the event's media partner, IQ Magazine. All our viewers are, of course, welcome to comment and react in real time. I'm not going to keep you waiting much longer, and it is a great pleasure to welcome the first of three opening addresses delivered by representatives from the European Union today. We're extremely honored to be joined by the three key institutions of the EU, the Council, bringing together the Member States, the European Commission, and the European Parliament. You will first hear a video message from Rita Brasil de Brito, the chair of the Cultural Working Group of the Council of the European Union, who will give you a bit of context about the current presidency of the EU held by Portugal. Let's hear from her.
Greetings. First of all, I would like to thank Arena Resilience Alliance for the invitation for being here today with you virtually. I also would like to convey a word of appreciation for initiatives like this one that raise awareness to the problems that, in this case, life arenas are suffering due to the current health crisis and aim at discussing possible solutions in a constructive way. I am currently serving as the chair of the Cultural Affairs Committee during the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union in the first semester of 2021. So what can be my contribution here is to inform you briefly about the Portuguese presidency priorities in the area of culture. But first, for those less familiar with the way the Council works, the Cultural Affairs Committee is a working party that prepares the work of the European Union Ministers for Culture in a wide range of areas relating to European Union cultural cooperation. Now, regarding our priorities, the priorities of the Portuguese presidency are based on the 18-month program of the 2021 presidency trio. And also, our priorities for culture have to be seen in the wider context of the 5 overarching priorities of the Portuguese presidency: a resilient Europe, a social Europe, green Europe, digital and global. These overarching priorities are reflected in the area of culture. As such, the main priority will be to promote the recovery, resilience and sustainability of the cultural and creative sectors with a proposal to approve Council conclusions. Council conclusions are documents that the Council of the European Union negotiates and adopts that express a political position on a certain topic. They are adopted by consensus and offer its negotiation starting in the working parties, in this case, the Cultural Affairs Committee. The topic of the Portuguese Presidency Council conclusions in the area of culture, to promote the recovery, resilience and sustainability of the cultural and creative sectors, was decided in 2020 as a result of COVID-19 pandemic and its devastating effects in the cultural and creative sectors. Before, our intention was to propose the adoption of Council conclusions in the area of cultural heritage. For the moment, this document, the draft Council conclusions, is being discussed among Member States in the Cultural Affairs Committee, and we hope that the Council of Ministers of Culture will approve it in this meeting in May. The second priority of the Portuguese presidency in the field of culture will be to promote a political debate in the Council of Ministers for Culture with a focus on diversifying sources and financing mechanisms to safeguard and protect our European cultural heritage. Other priorities will be to promote debates about culture, cohesion and social impact, and also arts and education. For these last two priorities, the Portuguese presidency will organize two conferences in Portugal in May and April, respectively. Last but not the least, we plan to launch the 2021-2027 Creative Europe programme with a high-level event in Portugal in June. For more information on these conferences and updated news regarding the Portuguese presidency, I would like to invite you to go to the sites of the Portuguese presidency and of the Ministry of Culture. I will ask the organization to share these websites. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you a very fruitful discussion.
Well, thank you so much to the Portuguese presidency of the EU and for this openness to find solutions for the sector. It's definitely appreciated. And thank you so much for this information about the work of the presidency, its priorities and its objectives in the field of culture. We'll watch closely for those council conclusions in May, and we definitely look forward to these events in Lisbon as well. We'll share the links that were mentioned in this video. And now it is my utmost pleasure to welcome our second opening address speaker, Ms. Vivian Hoffman, who is the Deputy Director General for Culture, Sports, Youth and Education at the European Commission. She is joining us live. Thank you so much, Ms. Hoffman, for giving us this opening address.
Dear members of the Arena Resilience Alliance, dear members of the European Parliament, dear Minister Tanson, dear representative of the Portuguese presidency, dear Rita, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to join you at the second edition of this conference organized by Arena Resilience Alliance. The strong commitment of the members of the Alliance in preparing cultural and sport venues for a safe and sustainable reopening is heartening. I'm very interested in hearing today about the test concerts organized by the Rockhal under the heading "Because Music Matters," and this is so true, for a safe return to live events in the future. We are all looking forward to the moment when venues and arenas across Europe will open their doors again and be filled with people, with vibrant performances to enjoy together. The European Commission is acutely aware of how severely the pandemic has hit the cultural sector and sport, and it has been offering a range of support measures. And we also support platforms to exchange information and good practices across European Union countries and across sectors to cope with these exceptional circumstances in which solidarity is a key. It is clear that a joint effort is needed to support these sectors, which are vital for our way of life and for our economy. This conference is a good example of how we can all work together hand in hand. Last November, the Commission published a study on the economic impact of COVID-19 on the sports sector. It shows that the core sector of sporting services may show a reduction of around 20 to 25% when compared to a non-COVID scenario. And we see a very sharp decline in the music sector. Accordingly to a recent study by GESAC, the European Author Societies, music was the second most important or most impacted sector in the cultural and creative industries after performing art, with a loss of 76% of its turnover. The European cultural and creative sectors as such represented 4.4% of EU GDP in terms of total turnover and employed more than 7.6 million people before the crisis. And it is for all these reasons that the European Commission is actively striving to help support your sector, together with our colleagues and partners in the European Parliament and Council of the European Union. Recently, last week, based on a proposal from the Commission, the Council of the European Union adopted the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which lies at the heart of the EU's recovery plan. You will know that it will make 772.5 billion euros in grants and loans available for public investment and reforms in the 27 member states to help them address the impact of the COVID pandemic, to foster the green and digital transitions, and to build resilient and inclusive societies. We do encourage national governments who are currently drafting their national recovery and resilience plans to spend part of the funds they will receive from the Next Generation EU Temporary Recovery Instrument on culture and cultural ecosystems. In addition to the horizontal support measures, we have also taken specific action to support the sport and cultural sectors. For instance, under the Music Moves Europe initiative, which supports Europe's music sector, we continue doing our utmost to support the green, digital, just and resilient recovery of the music ecosystem. And as part of this initiative, we will launch later this year an innovative support scheme for the sustainable music ecosystem. The overall aim is, of course, to help the sector recover from the crisis by becoming more sustainable and able to adapt to newly emerging trends after the crisis. Creative Europe, the Union's programme for the culture and audiovisual sectors, will support the cultural and creative sector with an increased budget of 1.842 billion euros, which is a 33% increase compared to the former budget. And we discussed the recovery of the European music ecosystem with experts from the member states, as we are, of course, all in this together. In March, we will organize a workshop on the diversity and competitiveness of the music sector, which will bring together experts from the member states and speakers from the sector. This event will provide an opportunity to discuss recent developments with relevance for EU and national policy making, and to discuss policy measures and best practices at European and national level. The ideas that will be gathered today during your event will inform the EU-level cooperation on culture, including under the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union, and should help further develop the Music Moves Europe initiative. Let me conclude. The sport and cultural and creative sectors need our combined support in order to bounce back from this crisis sustainably and with greater flexibility. Being able to reopen arenas, sports and performance venues safely will not only be a relief for the sector, but for all of us. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I wish you every success and a fruitful conference.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Viviane Hoffmann from the European Commission, for those welcome words. As you said, we are all in this together. And I think this kind of event shows that we are indeed working all together, the institutions, the sector, the sports sector, the music sector, to try and make the most out of this challenging situation. Thank you so much for those words. Now, last but not least, the third and final opening address of this conference. We're very lucky today, again, to have all three major institutions of the EU with us. And now here's a message from Iban Garcia del Blanco, who is one of the coordinators of the Cultural Creators Friendship Group at the European Parliament, a special committee dedicated to supporting European cultural policies. Let's hear from him.
From the Creative and Cultural Sector Friendship Group, we'd like to welcome the Portuguese presidency. We were working hard throughout these difficult months in order to tackle the main difficulties arising to this sector developed by the crisis of COVID-19. The cultural sector is especially weak by the special circumstances, like the impossibilities to perform lively spectacles, the impossibilities to perform any of their activities throughout the lockdown. But at the same time, cultural sector were so sympathetic with the necessities of common people, trying to make their performance by free and by network measures. We would like to encourage Portuguese presidency to manage that the cultural and creative sectors shall be part of the national plans that are going to develop the Next Generation EU plan that we managed for our side to have this cultural sector as a main part of them. From this cultural and creative friendship group, we'll keep working in order to tackle the next problems that needed to be solved, like the back of the sector to lively spectacles that is so needed, and the improve of the conditions of the workers of these sectors that were so weak at the past, were so humble at the past, but the COVID-19 became them even worse. So thank you very much for your participation here, and welcome to this meeting organized by our friendship group.
Such nice words of support from Iban Garcia del Blanco from the Cultural Creators Friendship Group of the European Parliament. Words of support and optimism. And I'm sure that you will hear more from the activities of the Cultural and Creators Friendship Group today, as we'll be joined by two of its members in our panels, who I'm sure will tell you more about all of this in detail. So I told you, we are lucky to have such a diverse chorale of support from the European Union, but this is only the beginning for today. And I'm very happy to announce that we can officially start the first session of this conference. In this first discussion, we will explore the theme of confidence, which is the golden thread for arenas to reopen to the public in good conditions as soon as possible. Big question is, how do we rebuild the link between public authorities, customers, sports teams, performers, and re-establish a functioning ecosystem? Because it is an ecosystem, this live events sector, made up of a tight-knit network of people, companies, and associations. So let's try to find out in this first chat, what is the degree of readiness for the sector to reopen after the unprecedented crisis it has been through? For this session, we will be joined by 6 speakers, which I will now briefly introduce one by one. I'll start with you, John. You are the Chief Operating Officer of AEG Europe. As such, you oversee a large variety of arenas in Europe, so you're ideally placed to talk to us about their operational readiness today. You're also the president of the European Arenas Association, so in a way, our host for today's event. Welcome, Mr. John Langford. Luca Scafati. Luca, thank you so much for joining us again. You were here in December already. You're the Director of Business Operations for the EuroLeague. You'll give us the perspective of the major basketball competition in Europe in this panel. Dominic Ruiz de Vesa. Mr. Ruiz de Vesa, I am so glad to have you with us today. You are a member of the European Parliament. Among other functions, you sit in the Committee on Culture and Sports, but also in the Cultural Creators Friendship Group. And you will tell us more about the Parliament's work in this context today. Thank you so much for joining our event. Not too far from the European Parliament in Brussels, the capital of the European Union, you can find the mythical Forêt Nationale Arena. And our next speaker is the venue manager there. Coralie, we are thrilled to have you with us today. You will tell us more about how you prepare the future of your activities in just a minute. Next is Alex Jäger, who is the sport director of the Champions Hockey League, one of Europe's major arena competitions. Alex, welcome on board. We are excited to hear about the perspective of the hockey world in this discussion. And finally, we're lucky to have Adam Goodyear with us. Adam, you're the founder and CEO of Real Life Tech, a leading company in the field of customer experience and data technologies for live events. We can't wait to hear your take. Welcome, Adam. Okay, now we have everybody introduced. I think we can go with the questions. My first question goes to you, John Langford. As the Chief Operating Officer of AEG Europe, you represent arenas in this panel. My question is, what has been put in place so far by arenas that can give confidence in your ability to deliver a safe environment and an enjoyable experience?
Thanks, Fabienne, and again, thanks for the introduction. The starting point for me is a recognition that arenas pre-COVID, our business is all about managing risk. It's what we do. It's what we understand. You know, we see hundreds of thousands of people coming through our doors every year. And in all of those circumstances, we're managing the risks around an event. And when COVID hit, it was kind of no different to that in the way that arenas viewed the pandemic. And so I guess the starting point of what our reaction was trying to understand the magnitude, the quantity, and the type of risks and how we could manage those. So those things within our control. At AEG, we have the benefit of being a global organization, and we're plugged into over 300 venues globally within our network. And we set about looking at 6 key areas. And I'll just touch on those quickly because I think it provides a really good framework in terms of how we evaluated the risk and the response to the pandemic. The first is we looked at workforce safety. So we looked at our teams, our people, how do we keep them safe? How do we keep the backstage safe? How do we keep the sports participants and athletes involved in our events safe? So that was the first thing. Second thing we looked at was environmental hygiene. So how do we clean the venues? How do we minimize the risk of transmission from touch surfaces? How do we clean the air? How do we ensure that we minimize the transmission of the virus? Third thing we looked at was beverage provision. So how can we make that better, easier, contactless? The fourth thing was technology and equipment. Again, I touched on this a little bit in terms of air purification, contactless, but we recognize that technology plays a huge part in minimizing risk. The fifth thing that we looked at is the customer journey. I'm sure Adam will talk a lot more about this in a little bit as well, but we basically tracked the entire customer journey, recognizing which part of that we can control, manage, and limit the risk. And finally, and I don't think we talk about this enough as arenas or businesses, and that's public awareness, communication. How do we tell our audiences and the fans? How do we tell the sports teams? How do we tell the artists coming into our buildings what it is we're doing? How do we give them that confidence that you've been talking about in your introductory address? So that's what we looked at globally in the AEG framework. We distilled that to our European portfolio. And pretty early in the pandemic, I mean, over the summer of last year, we put together reopening plans for all of our arena properties in Europe. We were hoping we would have opened sooner than, we haven't opened yet. We were hoping that we'd be able to open towards the back end of last year. But we were at least able to put some of those plans into place. So, we ran the NITO ATP World Tour tennis finals at the O2 Arena last year. It was a massive event, massive quarantine involved. We didn't have any audience, but we got to employ some of the things that we put into our plans. At Mercedes-Benz Arena in Berlin, for instance, we've had a range of sports activities going through there. So we've, employed some of those learnings and protocols, plans and guidance. And I think the key takeaway, at least for this conversation this morning, is that arenas understand risk. We prepped, we're ready to reopen. We're just waiting for, unfortunately, something which is beyond our control. And hopefully we can talk a little bit later in the conversation about what do we need to get to reopen.
Oh, and I'm sure we will definitely touch upon that topic later today. Thank you very much, John. So a lot to unpack already. But first I wanted to have another perspective, because this was a quite broad reading, and thank you very much for that very comprehensive reading of the situation, John. But let's try to see from the perspective, for instance, of the EuroLeague, the basketball EuroLeague. In the same context that John just described, Luca, I think, stop me if I'm wrong, that the EuroLeague has designed a set of very precise pandemic response guidelines. Can you briefly describe these and explain to us, echoing what John said, how would you like arenas to embrace those guidelines?
Yeah, thank you, Fabian. Well, it was great to hear from John what they're doing at the AG arenas. Actually, it would be great that all Euroleague basketball clubs would play in a AG arena, so that would be easier. But since unfortunately this doesn't happen, only a bunch of them play in AG arena, we have to do the work on our side as well. And actually, we went through a similar process. And what we have done is basically try to tackle all the issues that would allow us to regain the confidence in our fans going forward, right? But from a club standpoint, some of our clubs are owners of the arenas and operators, but most of our clubs are not owners, but still the main tenant. So what we think is that the clubs and the arena should really work together in these ventures, because at the end it's for the benefits of both entity to adopt these measures going forward. And the measures that we have prepared is a set of guidelines that touch things like, starting with access control, so things like staggered entrances, screening, symptom screening, or do COVID testing, normally quick testing, or solutions that allow fans to come with a validation of the vaccine or a negative test. We have tackled issues like crowd management. There's a lot of crowd intelligence software today available that allow to avoid mass gatherings. We have tackled sanitation. We tackle air filtration solutions. Some of the arenas, unfortunately, are not cutting edge in terms of, or new in terms of technology and hardware. So we have talked with companies that provide temporary solution, so installation of air filtrations that may be temporary and cheaper than doing a full installation from the scratch. We have worked with companies that provide city manifest and how to adapt and design a city manifest, ensuring social distancing, both to individuals but also to households. And then other tech measures like use of paperless ticketing, so to avoid context, to try to use cashless payment as much as we can, or in-seat delivery, and then apart from that, because we think that more than ensuring confidence, we have also to try to tackle aspects like, now we want funds to come back, but probably these funds that come back to the arena want a different approach when buying tickets. So from the season tickets, which is a kind of more risky for them because it's paying a big amount of money at the beginning, and they don't know if in the future something may happen, like it happened, it happened last year, unfortunately, and it's continuing this year. So we're talking about subscription model, we're talking about partial plans, we're talking about options for refunds and credits, donation, or added value.
Right.
So all these things that we think are important. So the last message, and communication, as John has said, is key. Communication to the funds and communication to the stakeholders, to the decision maker that will allow to reopen arenas.
Right. So again, a whole set of measures, very comprehensive set of measures to rebuild confidence. We've heard the word confidence in John's mouth. You also said that it's the key sort of factor, X factor here. My next question in this line of thought goes to Dominic Ruiz-Devesa. You are a member of the European Parliament. Confidence is also accountability to the public everywhere in Europe. You hold a mandate in an institution that represents the people. You sit in the Committee on Culture. My question here is, do discussions at EU level offer a view on the ideal balance between public health and live events from where you stand? In other words, how can public authorities contribute to the return of this confidence that we're talking about?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this important event dealing with a strategic subject, which is how to ensure that we can go back to live events in the cultural and the sports sector. I'm personally very committed to that, and I think what John and Luca have already said, I think sets the tone, because you are already thinking hard, I would say, and you are putting forward very concrete measures now that we can undertake, or that we can propose to the public authorities, so we can, as Fabian said, strike the right balance, and we can revive the sector without, of course, a danger for public health. No? So a few maybe suggestions on my own behalf. What we have seen, for example, by looking at the Spanish experience, is that cultural events have not been the focus of, I mean, generally speaking, of pandemic outbreaks. This has happened above all in more, private kind of parties, weddings, for example, funerals, when it's easy to lay down the guard, if I can use this expression, which is not the case in public events, when we have, a clearly established set of rules. Of course, bars and restaurants sometimes can also be problematic, but not so much cultural venues. No, particularly if we increase the bar in terms of measures. Of course, I understand that recoursing to allowing half entrance is not necessarily a solution for many cultural venues, because it's not profitable. So I understand that. But then there are other measures like the check-in temperature at the entrance. Even in Madrid, there was an experience of conducting the disease test at the entrance and getting the result before getting into the venue, and it worked. No one got infected. Then, of course, probably the etiquette, if I can use that word, has to change. If we talk about sport events, probably the yelling, it's not good for stopping contagion. No, yelling, shouting, hugging other members of the public when the team has won the match and things like that. The etiquette probably has to be very, very different, and we have to be able to apply this etiquette. So we cannot allow things to go out of control. But I think there is a number of things. And also looking at the Spanish case, our minister has been very vocal on this, and he has developed the campaign La Cultura es Segura, Culture is Safe. And of course, this includes also with the good measures I was referring to sports. And I think this should be the way to go. Maybe also try to develop a common European approach to how we deal with live events in the cultural and sports sector. That would be good, not to have different approaches in every city or every region. And generally speaking, to strike the right balance, because of course we are now, and with this I finish, we are now distributing the vaccine. I think this is very good. We're doing it at the European level, regardless of, the media, hiccups sometimes on specific problems, but it's a European focus is the right one. But regardless of the vaccine is not going to be the silver bullet either. This thing is going to stay with us for a while, and we have to adapt. And adapt means, doing what Luca and John have proposed, and myself, to adapt is not to shut down everything, no? But to live with this thing with the right measures.
And to adapt. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Ruiz de Beza. And from what I hear from your take, to adapt as Europeans in a coordinated way. I think this is going to be repeated over and over again today. And thank you for this perspective from the European Parliament. Thank you for all these examples as well that you gave. I think they will serve as inspiration for the rest of our discussion. We'll be back with you shortly, but I'm turning now to Alex Jäger. So Alex Jäger, again, Hockey Champions League. In the first leg of this conference that we had in December, we had a very interesting conversation about how important it is for artists to always consider risk management when they are on tour. Now, from where you stand in the current context, can you tell us a bit more about risk management? We heard about that very important concept with John, for instance, but in the context of sports teams when they play abroad. I think you just have to unmute, Alex.
Yeah. Thanks, Fabian, for having me here. It is a big question for a lot of teams, which have actually, I felt like in the past, not so much thought on risk management in such kind of way. I think prevention is better than the cure. I mean, that's a phrase that everyone knows. I must say, for the Champions Hockey League, we're one of the lonely leagues in Europe which has not been playing for a whole season. We have actually paused. This is will be a very interesting task for us to see how we come back. So that's very special for us. That's why I'm looking at Luca. We're following the EuroLeague very closely right now and see what they are doing in all their concepts and all their ideas, as we're trying to learn once we get back to play again in August, which we hope to do better on that. From a sports events organization perspective, such as the CHL, I would like to consider the following points to be important in risk management. Of course, we do have a variety of different documents, sport regulations, travel advisories, but all of that. But our most important document, which we have worked on the whole summer, is the hygiene concept. And I'm sure most of you have had contact with this and maybe have been working on this. But this is something very important for us and also for the sports clubs to, if you want to consider players working on that. It's not so much on the hygiene in a way of how can we prevent it inside of the arena. It's more on how do we deal with players, for example, being infected by COVID-19? How do we return them safely back on the ice in some kind of way? And I think the EuroLeague has for sure had some touch on that too. And because the nightmare would be that one of the players would, I don't know, get hurt or be collapsed on the field or something, and we recognize that he has been infected and no one found out, and that could lead to a nightmare. And this is something we want to avoid. Second, most important, I would say, and the easiest step in the process is to get insurance. Not so easy anymore through the hygiene, but in the past that has been a very big factor as a sport organization part. Yeah, not so important, but not so popular. I would say not so important. It's very important, but not so popular. Is transfer the risk of loss to another party whenever feasible, such as waivers, releases, clubs, arenas. For a sports organization, this is still a big part of us, and I'm sure AEG knows about this. How this is getting handled. Last, but the very team should create a formal position of the risk management. I think that's something that teams are now working on, that they have a really risk management officer that is responsible for implementing and monitoring those different things. I think those are the most important tasks. From the last point, I would say from a risk perspective of the teams in the past has always been time the biggest pressure that puts them on, because during a season you have fatigue, you have a very tight scheduling, and that has brought some risk in your activities. And but this is something we always consider in doing schedules and all that. And yeah, I would say this is most important in that area. Thanks.
Right. Thank you so much, Alex. So you were prepared to a certain extent already before this pandemic hit, and needless to say, after everything that you just explained, now you're all the more prepared, and you have developed all those tools and all that toolbox to hopefully face the future in the best possible conditions. Thank you so much for the perspective of the Champions Hockey League, Alex. We'll be back with John and Dominic Ruiz de Veza later, but first I would just want to finish our round table with you, Adam Goodyear. So from where you stand, what are the technological innovations which will have to be put in place because of COVID-19 to put safety first at live events, but without downgrading the experience? This is really like one of the concepts that I think we should really explore today. In other words, surely digital technological solutions can offer great possibilities in this new context, but how can we make sure that we don't lose the human touch of events as well?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me on. So we're working with a number of arenas across the EU, and there are three areas that I would like to point out that will make the most significant difference in terms of how technology can help bring events back safely. Number one, and John mentioned this, as did Luca, is utilize mobile and digital ticketing for entry and access control. Many arenas and venues have gone this way anyway, but there are still a number of paper tickets in circulation. It's really essential that this now moves fully digital and fully mobile. It removes an unnecessary contact point, but also provides that key access into the fan for each arena to be able to communicate safety information to them. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty when coming back. And in order to instill that confidence, the ability to be able to communicate with each individual fan is going to be incredibly important. And mobile ticketing provides the entry point for that. The second point I want to talk about is health passports. There is the potential that either rapid testing or proof of immunization will become essential in events opening. If this is the case, and that governments across the EU and the EU themselves decide that this is how events should open, it is essential that these forms of testing are linked into a venue's own systems and are not separated out into dedicated apps or other ways of operating. If they're linked into a venue's systems, it allows the venue to be able to control that as part of an overall customer journey. This is what John also mentioned at the beginning, that there are systems already in operation, from ticketing to access control to food and beverage, that health passports should link into. And all of the main providers have what they call APIs that allow those systems to integrate. So this should be a key factor in the decision making. And then finally, one thing we would urge is that arenas and venues are bold in how they look at their operations. And one of the big things around food and beverage is moving your queue, and the queues that would normally sit within concourses for food and beverage, they can move to the mobile phone now. You've seen it happen in fast food outlets around the world, where they have removed the order process from a physical point and a physical till into either a phone or a station elsewhere. If arenas can be bold in taking this operation alongside their caterers, you can keep concourses clear and keep concourses free and provide a better customer experience that will also help to reduce costs and keep people safe. But it's essential that the providers in this area work together. I'll give you an example that we worked with the SSE Arena in Wembley, and I saw that John is listening in, at the Anthony Joshua boxing event in December, where we did just this. We moved the F&B ordering to the phone, and it was incredibly successful in being able to control queues and control throughput of orders. So this is what I would encourage arenas to look at.
That's a wonderful example of an innovative and yet simple solution. Everybody's got a phone these days that apparently is really delivering results in terms of crowd management and risk management in those arenas. So thank you so much for this example and all the others, Adam. I think there's so much we don't know yet about how we can improve the situation. And I think this kind of event is really the perfect opportunity to discover all these new ways to operate. Now, I'm obviously saving best for last with you, Koali. So, Koali, we've been talking a lot about EU, Brussels. You're familiar with this. You're based in Brussels, not too far away from the European Parliament, the Commission, all those European institutions. And you are the venue manager of Forêt Nationale, legendary venue. My question for you is the following one. The live events ecosystem, as we heard today already, has been working on embracing sustainable practices. And it looks like this process will have to accelerate as we return from the pandemic, hopefully. So what does a more sustainable live events environment look like to you? And how should it impact those long-held practices for all the stakeholders involved?
Okay, well, how much time do I get?
I think that's the last.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for the invitation. I'm also very grateful for the participation of the EU Commission and the Parliament today, as at our scale of the live music industry and the touring of artists, it is crucial to come to a consensus. We've been talking a lot about health and safety indeed, and we've been all frantically working on protocols and risk management to enhance safety and security of our events. So I am going to be a little bit of the hitch for, another aspect of the customer experience, as you said, is the sustainability, as it's, the need to help and support our planet is obviously very realistic still, and the audience of the future appreciates it as well. So we as a venue, Forest National, we're part of the Sportpaleis group, which is the main player in Belgium. We became recently also a Live Nation venue, and that means that we are actually complying with the Green Nation Sustainability Charter and the green targets that we need to aim for and reduce pressure and high dependence on natural resources and local footprint created by our events. That's still obviously a major issue that hasn't gone away. And there are a few directives that we need to aim for. First of all, it's obviously reducing the carbon footprint of mass gatherings to 50% by 2030. So, the clock is ticking, we're nearly there. And we have to review the way we do our energy management. A venue should, in fact, be autonomous with regards to production of renewable energy by 2030. We've already done a lot at the venue with replacements to LEDs, consumption monitoring, of course, light-out policy, easy, quick wins. But the major thing is actually that we need to be able to invest in technology, solar panels, charging station. All this is evolving very quickly as well. So what we need to do, obviously, is investigating some partnerships with these technology companies. Another part for this charter is obviously the transport. As we have been grouping deliveries for a long time now at the venue, we've been reviewing the infrastructure. Obviously, we're Belgium, so we have invested in large beer tanks and soft mix, which does reduce the number of deliveries, reduces packaging, etc. So it does help a tremendous lot. We've also worked with the STOP principle, which is obviously from the Flemish, but we actually are are in favor of alternative transportation to the car, which is not easy in our country, as obviously our European colleagues will know that Brussels is quite a complex matter in terms of mobility. But since 2011, we have a fully integrated event pass in all our tickets. So it's one fee to access the Brussels public transport network. That's helped already a lot, but we do want to reach an even better score. And there is a risk, of course, that with the crisis that we've known now, that might be tricky. Will people still want to take public transport? Will they again refer to their car? It's going to be a lot of work, I reckon. We've also encouraged staff with leasing bike plans, and we don't offer company cars, of course. So, and then a really important one is obviously to ban the plastic. I think a lot of us are already working on that point, because we need to get to a zero waste management in a circular economy, engaging thousands of demanding visitors per event. So it's not only just the venue staff to recycle paper and cardboard, cans, bottles, glass, or reduce packaging, but if we want to reduce, to get to 90% recycled waste by 2030, in order to achieve this, we need the buy-in from all stakeholders, not just venue staff, but also and especially research and development commissioned to suppliers in Belgium or across the borders. But we have been working very closely with InBev and Coca-Cola to actually roll out a new recyclable cup to venues and festivals. And that's what we were actually about to do just before the crisis. So that will obviously be picked up again when we start. And it's important because actually it might be not a perfect circular economy just yet, but it creates waste that is valuable and can be profitable, a profitable resource to sell to another industry, for instance, the furniture industry, etc. So we're also maybe using this downtime to change our business model, because there are other occupations to the site. And that's why we have to work closely as well with waste management companies and engage them to invest in innovative technology and revisit processes to enable this circular economy. So it's a bit the chicken or the egg situation, but we have the time to work on this backstage, if you wish. So we have been collaborating with other venues and are looking for collaborating with festivals as well for economy of scale. We've already put staff on EcoWatch. Staff awareness is important, but also they need to be able to encourage our visitors to sort the waste appropriately, to keep the neighborhood tidy, because also, and even with the health and safety measures put in place for the COVID, the last mile management becomes even more important. But that's also the case for the sustainable aspect of it. So we're not just responsible for what's happening inside our venue, but also the areas around it.
Yeah, the spillover effect, so to say. Yeah,
exactly. And the key thing, actually, the strength of our business is that through us, we can inspire and educate large audiences so that they can actually repeat these gestures in their own environment. And
so not only, I'm sorry to interrupt, but not only rebuilding confidence with the audience, because obviously being sustainable as an industry will have an impact on the confidence of the audience returning to live venues, because those priorities are paramount now for the public, but also being really an actor of change for other industries, if I understand correctly.
Yes, it's actually, it's like a puzzle falling into each other. Every part is really important. We cannot do our business anymore just with inside our walls, and that's the key thing with sustainability as well. We need to look now to build new relationships, new partnerships, enforce collaboration. That's and especially sustainability is not just the ecology. It's also the social projects, contributing, supporting local charities, and the economy as well. And that's something that we should not be forgetting about, and we can work on it as well, because maybe they can help us as well to start up some parts of the business as well. Like, for instance, in our venue, but also in a lot of festivals in Belgium, we work with associations, sports, youth, charity, and they are integrated in our operations, and we give them financial support as well to do their activities. So it's a win-win situation, really, where
we said it before, it's an ecosystem, isn't it, Coralie? It's everybody is in this together. Vivian Hoffman from the European Commission said that earlier. We're all in this together. We have to count on each other as this big ecosystem. So unless you had a last word, I because I'm looking at the watch as well. I'm sorry, part of my job. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that actually, you know, in order to get to achieve these objectives that are coming closely very quickly, we will need to do some investments, and obviously the economical situation of our companies is not at the level where we can confidently make those investments. So therefore we need to find partnerships, but maybe you know, at the European level we can also be supported to actually make this make these things possible or easier, because otherwise I'm afraid there is a real risk of, you know, sustainability becoming at the end of the priority list.
Well, actually, you just gave me my transition here, because we have obviously a member of the European Parliament in this panel talking about European support. You know, this is kind of his bread and butter. First, before going back to Mr. Dominic Ruiz-Deveza to unpack all this, I just wanted to go back to you, John Langford. You heard from your fellow panelists, I think, a very, very comprehensive picture of the readiness for the industry, for the sector, to go back to this level of confidence, right? And you heard from Coralie that, all right, you're making the efforts, you're taking that charge on your back right now, but maybe you'll need help from public authorities, public, you know, institutions. What kind of help is needed, according to you, from where you stand?
Four things, and I'll make it quick because I'm conscious of time. So I'll just go in punchy with what I think those four things are. Firstly, is a very clear pathway to return to live event activity, to safe live event activity. You know, our sector was the first to shut and will most likely be the last to open. And as a sector, we really need to understand what triggers are that will allow us to reopen. The second thing is a bridge of financial support between now and when we are able to open at a commercial or profitable at a profitable level. The third thing is consistency in guidance, legislation, and protocols across regions. You know, I see it in my portfolio that we will have one country, but two cities within the same country have got absolutely different protocols in terms of what is or what isn't allowed for their events. So I think that should be not just within a country, but across national borders as well. And then the final thing for me is just freedom to travel across borders. And it's not necessarily just within the European or Schengen area, but also with neighboring countries. You know, a tour, a music tour, or a sports association, in order to make things work, requires multiple stops on an event tour, on a routing. And if you can just play Germany and France and Belgium, but you can't play other countries nearby, it just doesn't work financially. So those are the four things. Nice, short and sweet and straight to the point.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's very synthetic, and I just want to take that package of four things and just throw it, so to say, at Mr. Dominic Ruiz-Deveza, the member of the European Parliament who's with us in the panel. So these concrete things, when you hear them from the sector, from the industry, like, what's your take on this? What do you take from this conversation as a member of the European Parliament?
Thank you very much again, and to the Association of Arenas. The question, Fabienne, that you're directing to me now is maybe too general or too open-ended, but I'm going to focus on the things that both Coralie, or some of the things that Coralie and John just said. One aspect that maybe we haven't tackled so much in the first round is the financial support for the cultural sector, and also in this case the big venues, the arenas. No? And it was, I will say, rather unfortunate that in the design of the European Recovery Plan, the cultural sector was not featured as a priority in this big pot of money. As you know, we're talking about 3/4 of a billion euros, right? So how can we solve this? Well, Coralie has given a very good insight. If we focus alongside the public safety aspect and public health aspect that we discussed in the first round, on sustainability, on removing plastic of the events, on digitalization. Also, Adam discussed this more in connection with the safety aspect of eliminating paper tickets, for instance. Then we can ask for financing from the European Recovery Plan, because the digital and the green transitions, as you know, are the key priorities. So even if the cultural sector is not as a sectoral priority, by linking the own transition in the cultural sector, also in the context of the pandemic, with the sustainability and the digital aspect, I think we can benefit greatly from the plan, and we have a good case, right? And then the other point John mentioned is the question of the travel restrictions, and I very much agree with him that we should not condone, blank travel restrictions or country by country restrictions. We have been rather critical since the beginning. If you look at what happened 1 year ago around this time, unilateral border closings without respecting the Schengen Code by some member states, and now the latest restrictions from Belgium and Germany are very much, uncalled for, and again not following European guidelines. Of course, again, we have to be mindful. We have to follow public health guidance, but we know, for example, it is true that scientific evidence is sometimes changing, of course, because we are facing a very new thing, this epidemic. But the latest evidence, for example, focusing on air travel, we know that ventilation is quite good. It's not, particularly unsafe, and so on and so forth. And this is critical, as John said, for moving artists, for moving audiences too, obviously, because we are in a single market also for cultural activities, and we should be able to move from country to country, looking for the cultural activity that we are interested in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this insight and for reacting to everything that you've heard today about the sports sector, the cultural sector. Obviously, there's so much the EU can do, also so much the EU cannot do, right? That's the problem of subsidiarity. Sometimes the member states unilaterally close their borders, or unilaterally want to fund something or not fund some other thing. I think the initiative that the Parliament has taken, we will talk about this in the second panel, of a joint resolution calling for sports and culture to be integrated on those recovery packages, the recovery facility, and you definitely were instrumental and you participated in those resolutions, Mr. Ruiz de Veza. I think this is a very good first step, and I'm sure that what you said, this message of optimism and this constructive approach, working all together, is definitely striking a chord for some of our panelists today. We still have 5 minutes. I just wanted maybe to ask those of you who haven't spoken twice if they have maybe a very short, brief last statement, maybe picking up from what they heard. I'm looking at maybe Alex, Luca, or Adam here. Anyone wants to add something to further elaborate on what our friends already said? Are you good?
I want to say something.
All right, Koali then.
Yes. Well, I just wanted to say that obviously very often culture is not a priority or falls off an agenda somewhere, but it's very often underestimated how powerful this instrument is, because we reach straight through the heart of people, and we can use that as a vehicle, as in the same way the virus, that bloody virus uses us. But you know, an artist sometimes can really vehicle any message, sustainability, about hygiene, about anything. Think of Coldplay when he announced that he wouldn't go on tour anymore unless the tours would be more sustainable and better for the planet. So I do think that, but let's meet up for a coffee at some time in Brussels when we can do that again. But I think it's really important to put culture up front and not to underestimate our role really in education somehow.
We'll definitely meet for coffee soon all together in a reusable cup, please. But yeah, so I think this is a perfect way to wrap up our panel, this message of hope and this message that we can connect the dots really with social aspects, environmental aspects, you know, all the other sectors that contribute to that constellation of sports and culture. It's really a matter of working together hand in hand. So on these words, I just really wanted to thank you all so much for your participation, for your time, for your contribution, for your input. It's been really lovely to have you on board. I hope you'll stay for the second part of this conference, which is also going to be very, very interesting. But for now, I'll just let you, unplug, and we will take a short break in this conference, maybe 5-10 minutes, and we'll be back for the second part very, very shortly. Stay with us. There's another very, very interesting panel, and there's some announcements towards the end. No spoilers, but please join us after the break. Thank you very much. And we're back for the second part of this conference, A Game of Two Halves, the return leg. Now, many of you in the audience are aware that test concerts have been on the map these last few weeks as a way to experiment the return of live music in a safe and in a healthy way. It will be one of our focuses for this second part, and we will start by talking about a series of events which took place in Luxembourg last week. To tell us more about this, it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome back to the Game of Two Halves Ms. Sam Tonson, Minister for Culture and Justice of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, who was with us in the first leg and who is coming back today to unveil this initiative from Luxembourg. Minister Tonson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me again. Because since the last webinar organized by the Arena Resilience Alliance, we have really moved a step forward. At this moment in Luxembourg, cultural institutions are able to organize events with a maximum capacity of 100 people in the audience and with strict sanitary measures to be put in place by the venues. In this context, I have been discussing together with the Rockhal and health authorities in Luxembourg the possibility to organize a series of shows that would add to the understanding of the impact of this pandemic on the environment of indoor live events. 5 shows have happened from February 10th to February 14th under the name Because Music Matters, each of them in front of 100 people in a specific setup where the audience would have allocated seats around a central stage in order to ensure a certain level of proximity despite social distancing put in place throughout the venue. The shows were organized in collaboration with Luxembourg Health Authority, and the testing of every participant was put in place before and after each show. So after 11 months without indoor activity at the Rockhal, one of the most important components of this experiment was to anticipate and cater to audience, artists, and staff expectations. It was really important to bring back confidence of all our stakeholders that live events are a safe environment. A strict protocol has been put in place at the Rockhal and was meant to be tested before a possible upscaling towards hopefully bigger capacities. This protocol included full contactless audience screening and access control, guidance inside the venue, and a fully reserved seating venue. Bars and food stands were closed. The audience had to wear their mask at all times when inside the venue. I believe that test events like the ones in Luxembourg, but also similar initiatives that have been taking place in Leipzig or in Barcelona, and the ones that are currently being discussed in our neighboring countries are very important steps forward, as they show that some activities can come back if you put in place appropriate measures to deal with this pandemic. They also help venues and organizers to identify the levers that can be put in place to ensure events are as safe as only possible. I could witness at the Rockhal great support of both artists and audience. All have been patient and willing to contribute to the events and the learnings we can take of it. Government support is essential for such initiatives. With a heavy focus on public health, we must also realize that the well-being of our communities is not to be neglected. Culture, music, and of course also sports are key components of our community's well-being. I was very pleased to read that the European Parliament has adopted on February 10th a joint resolution stating under point 33 that it considers that arenas and stadiums are at the core of the social fabric of sport and cultural ecosystems in our societies, and that it recognizes that enabling venues to reopen is essential for the health and well-being of our citizens and for economic recovery, both now and in the future. I believe that the support that we give to initiatives that will enable the return of live events is crucial, and I would like to end by showing you some impressions of what has taken place at the Rockhal last week. Thank you for your attention.
I just have had this need to play. I think the last show we played was in September.
This is the O2 although we have all these things to deal with, this pandemic, but it's time that music comes back. One word. Hope.
Hands down, don't move, stop thinking, never stop breathing, don't fall, blink.
One word, hope. Such nice images, such a warming feeling to see audiences coming back to live events, feeling safe and enjoying themselves at the same time. Thank you so much, Minister Tanson, for these words of optimism and confidence in the future. And thank you also for insisting on the importance of live events to focus on well-being and public health, because these concepts are really, really at the core. It's fantastic what took place at Rockhal last week. It really shows that there is resilience and hope in the sector. We are going to talk about hope and resilience in the second panel of the day. After exploring readiness and confidence in the first discussion earlier, we're going to look basically a little bit ahead of us in this second session. So let's now explore more concretely the solutions for tomorrow. First of all, how do we ensure the event sector, the live event sector, doesn't shut down if a similar public health crisis happens in the future? Also, and equally importantly, are we soon going to be in a post-war economy for the event sector? We talked about the recovery facility at European level. I think we're going to explore that as well. If that's the case, we need to explore in detail the idea of European cooperation in that field. And of course, we will discuss how health and wellness should always, of course, remain at the center of the agenda for the sector. But enough spoilers. I suggest we immediately introduce our brilliant panelists of the day. They will join us now on video. We'll start with you, Lotta. Lotta, you're the CEO of GOT Events, a public company that runs 9 venues in Gothenburg in Sweden, including the Scandinavian. You'll give us the perspective of arenas on all these topics in a minute. Welcome on board, Lotta. It's really nice to have you. Next is Timo Hoppen, who is the Director of Operations for Semmel Concerts, a leading German concert promoter. Your company has worked for a myriad of artists in the past, including Celine Dion, Elton John, Hans Zimmer, and so many other big names. Needless to say, you're ideally positioned to tell us how the sector is preparing for the future. Dr. Anne Vergison, we are so happy to have you with us, Doctor, from the Luxembourg Health Authority. You will tell us everything about the Rockhal concerts that we just saw a small snippet of in the video, the concerts that took place last week. And we have so much more to ask you on the subject of health and well-being. So thank you so much for being with us today, Doctor. And last but not least, we will have the privilege of hearing from another member of the European Parliament, Laurence Farah, who coordinates the work of the Renew Group at the Committee on Culture of the European Parliament. MEP Farah has been a very, very strong advocate for culture and youth in the last few months in Brussels. Unfortunately, she can no longer join us live today, but she has recorded a video for us. And what I suggest to do is to start this panel with her words, with her message. I think it will give a fantastic canvas for the rest of the discussion. So let's start with her video message.
Bonjour et merci à l'Arena Resilience Alliance pour son invitation, pour votre invitation. Merci aussi d'organiser cet événement sur un sujet au cœur de l'actualité et au cœur de nos préoccupations. Je suis donc Laurence Farah, je suis députée européenne du groupe Renew et je travaille plus particulièrement sur ces sujets de la culture, de l'éducation et du sport dans la commission culture pour laquelle je suis coordinatrice. En effet, ce sujet, il est clé parce que depuis un an, nos secteurs culturels, le secteur du sport, le secteur des grands événements vivent une crise sans précédent, une crise totalement atypique sur laquelle il faut agir. Alors, depuis un an, le Parlement européen et les députés qui m'entourent en commission culture ont été très proactifs. Nous avons fait voter en septembre une résolution pour la relance culturelle. C'est un sujet très important parce qu'elle incluait, quand je dis culturel, c'était tout le secteur événementiel, et pour peser sur les États membres et sur la Commission pour que les plans de relance prévoient 2% qui soient vraiment fléchés vers tous ces secteurs. Maintenant, les États membres sont en train de finaliser leur plan de relance et ils seront évalués d'ici avril. Donc ce point des 2% n'est pas absolument contraignant, mais pour autant, ça a été vraiment quelque chose de valorisé, sur lequel nous avons beaucoup insisté pour que tous nos secteurs, parce qu'ils ont leur économie, mais aussi parce qu'ils font la vie de nos sociétés, ils sont très importants dans la convivialité, dans l'équilibre de nos populations, on l'a vu, l'équilibre mental, moral, le fait de pouvoir se retrouver, pour que vraiment tous nos secteurs culturels, sportifs, événementiels puissent être considérés dans les plans de relance. La semaine dernière encore, pour citer d'autres initiatives, nous avons voté une résolution, elle aussi, qui a été avalisée à une très large majorité sur la jeunesse et le sport en temps de Covid. Et là aussi, nous avons souligné l'importance qu'il y avait de permettre aux grandes structures, aux stades, à tout ce qui fait notre société, de réouvrir. Alors maintenant, comment on fait? On sait qu'il y a une question de coordination européenne, on le voit, hein, cette crise est très atypique, nous sommes en train de nous organiser, tant sur le plan sanitaire avec la question des vaccins qui a été largement en débat, que sur celui de la coordination d'ouverture des frontières. On voit qu'il y a encore beaucoup de sujets sur ce point parce que, en effet, tant que nous sommes soumis aux variants et tant que la population européenne n'est pas massivement vaccinée, nous allons avoir ces questions qui mettent à mal la circulation des sportifs, la circulation des artistes et le fait qu'ils puissent se produire ou non. Donc, je dirais, on a besoin de cette coordination, mais encore une fois, on est dans cette situation très atypique qui mérite une adaptation permanente. Alors, je voulais saluer les expériences qui ont été menées, celle du Rockhal Luxembourg, qui est tout à fait intéressante et qui doit nous inspirer à l'avenir. Je veux citer aussi les expériences qui vont être menées en France avec 5 concerts tests, mais aussi en avril, ce comité scientifique qui va se réunir pour évaluer les meilleures solutions et prouver que nous pouvons nous adonner à nos pratiques sportives et culturelles en limitant et en interdisant tous les risques. Donc en effet, il y a toute cette question des coordinations entre tests PCR, ventilation des salles, distanciation sociale, tous ces sujets qui, on voit bien, sont testés et qui donnent des bons résultats et qui sont générateurs d'espoir. Donc j'espère vraiment qu'on va pouvoir avancer sur ces différents points pour permettre la reprise de nos activités. Alors, pendant ce temps-là, il y a la question de la vaccination qui progresse et on a cet objectif qui a été fixé par la Commission européenne des 70% de population vaccinée à la fin de l'été, ce qui serait une cible tout à fait majeure et importante pour la reprise du tourisme, des grands événements, et qui aussi nous posera la question du passeport vaccinal qui est en débat, hein, qui va faire débat dans nos pays, mais aussi dans nos instances. Je dois dire qu'à titre personnel, moi, j'y suis favorable. J'y suis favorable dès lors que, bien sûr, tout le monde y aura accès, et je pense notamment aux plus jeunes, puisque travaillant aussi sur Erasmus+, je souhaite vivement que toutes les mobilités puissent reprendre, et c'est pour moi une très bonne solution. Voilà quelques bribes de ce que je voulais vous dire, de ma participation à ce débat qui, encore une fois, pour moi, est majeur, parce qu'il touche à tous les aspects de notre vie, de notre société, mais aussi de notre rétablissement dans une vie normale. Je vous souhaite une très bonne séance de travail et puis j'espère que très vite nous pourrons reprendre les grands matchs, les grands concerts, tout ce qui fait notre rayonnement culturel et sportif. Très bon après-midi.
Eh bien, merci, Laurence Farran. Thank you so much for those words and for this intervention. So much to unpack, so much to discuss from MEP Farran's intervention on vaccination, on health passports, on the recovery measures. I really want us to discuss that today. I'm sure our panelists have a lot to say on these issues. So without further ado, I think we can start. I'll go with Lotta now. Lotta, you run several live venues in Sweden. How are the coming months looking like for you from where you stand? Beyond experiments like we saw in Rockhal or in other European places, how do you see the nature of collaboration? We talked about the ecosystem earlier in the first panel, the collaboration between all the various parts of these live events, this live events ecosystem in the future.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's been a very challenging year, but we've been fortunate because we have 7 home teams, and the national leagues are more or less running as they usually do, but without the audience, of course. So that looks promising for the year ahead. We're hoping to open up for some audience in the coming months. The situation is quite severe in Sweden still. We're also planning for our own event, which is the Gothenburg Horse Show, and we're hosting double finals in show jumping and dressage in about a month. So it's been a lot of learning. We're used to logistics, we're used to animal welfare, of course, and security. So that apart, I mean, what I think is a greatest benefit out of this crisis is that it's brought a lot of people together. And apart from the Arena Resilience Alliance, we also have a national network. I mean, we're quite a young industry in Sweden, so we don't have an organized association for events, but it's sort of we formatted one, ranging from the smallest private company up to large global promoters, federations, etc. And we meet every week. And that's really, really valuable because we've been able to gather together a lot of knowledge, but also working together gives us a good voice towards the decision makers and politicians.
I'll have another question for you about that later. One of your answers really at the level of Sweden at national level then is collaboration, if I understand correctly. That's one of the answers to the crisis. We'll thread on that later because I think there's so much to dig under that concept. Now turning to you, Timo. Timo, as a promoter, as a live events promoter, let's say you're a risk taker. That's kind of like the definition of your job. For instance, a few months back, your company has organized an open air experiment with like 5,000 people or something like this in Berlin. My general question for you is, how has your general attitude to risk changed with the pandemic? To give you an example of what I'd like us to discuss, if we start talking, as Ms. Farran, MEP Farran did, about vaccination passports, health passports, surely this element alone will drastically increase the risk for your operations. What do you have to say about this?
First of all, thanks for having me here. Yeah, I think we should maybe say that the projects such as Back to Life or the drive-in theater shows that occurred last year and during the pandemic aren't shows they're meant to make any profit. These are not economical concepts. They don't work because if you only have, if you're only allowed to let a fourth of the people into the venue, you don't have only a fourth of the costs. So we did those shows to show that we're still here, that we're capable of doing shows even in a pandemic with high security level, so they're safe for the customers. We did those shows to bring artists and musicians back to the stage and give the crew some work to do, and also to show the people are desperate for some culture in their life. And yes, promoters are high risk takers, and we always will be taking the risk of a concert. But normally our risks are calculable. You do know, or you can figure out how many people will attend to a concert or to a show roundabout for a specific artist. But at the moment we've got risks that are not calculable. We can't even say if a concert will take place not in October, not in November, not in December. That is the biggest problem we have at the moment. We can't calculate the risks at all anymore. And our guests, the visitors, the people, they have lost their faith in the concerts, not because they're afraid of the virus, because they don't know if they're going to buy a ticket for a show now. I don't even know if that show is going to take place. Maybe I lose the money, maybe I get a voucher. I don't know what happens. And that is our biggest problem at the moment, I would say, that we can't calculate what's going to happen. We can't plan anything properly because we don't know what's the situation going to be in like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And we do need a plan. We do need something to tell the people, to tell the customers, the visitors, what's going to happen. We need to tell them, okay, listen, until June, July, August, whenever, there will be a vaccination for everyone. And after that, hopefully, we can do our shows again. We can reopen the arenas. We can do the concerts. You're free to buy the tickets because the show will take place in October, November, December. Then we could plan again. Then we could take the risk, and that will be okay. If we can't do that, this is a risk we can calculate, and this is nothing you can work with. And that will work for too much longer, to be fair and to be honest. Yeah.
We heard from various members of the European Parliament, also from the European Commission, from Vivian Hoffman this in the first part of this conference. There's a big bag of money that is available through this recovery facility mechanism at EU level. And well, we'll go back to this with you, Timo, and Lotte later, but I would like also to have your take on obviously resilience and collaboration is not going to be enough for you, Lotte. Being used to risk and evolving in a constant risk environment and continuing that optimistic approach is not going to be enough for you, Timo. You will have at some point, both in your different perspectives, to rely on public support. And so at this European level, because we heard about this recovery facility and that flagging potentially of 2% of that recovery facility for culture and maybe sports, I'll ask you for your take on that later. But now that we've heard from the sector, specifically the live events sector, I would like now to hear from a specialist in health matters. Dr. Anne Vergison, you supervised the series of small concerts at Rockhal that we just saw the video of. Drawing from this experience and also in the context of recent announcements of similar experiences in neighboring countries of Luxembourg, how optimistic are you on the potential for live venues to adapt for larger events in the future? We'd like you to just unmute yourself before.
Sorry, I forgot.
It happens all the time. The floor is yours.
So far as Rockhal is concerned, it's a bit early to have a definitive conclusion about the event. We're still waiting for the testing result that will happen this week for the second test for the participants. But we're quite optimistic that we will have good results from that. The first early results are really good. We don't think we will see a lot of transmission during the concert. We were really struck by the fact that all the people were really extremely compliant to all measures that were put in place. They were really enthusiastic and they had really perfectly understood all the measures. They were completely prepared to come. They knew what would happen. They were not surprised with the testing. They were accepting it quite nicely. We had no problem in explaining to people because they knew already. Everything was fine for that. The circulations were okay. People really stayed at their place during the concert. They didn't try and move. They really respected all the instruction that were given to them before the concert. So I think they really had fully understood what was the objective, and that was their interest. And I think if you really prepare that well, and if you have reasonable measures, I think you shouldn't be excessive in the measures, I heard talking earlier in the discussion that someone was talking about taking temperature, measuring temperature at the entrance. I think we have a lot of measures which haven't been proven efficacious to really control things. They are quite impressive because they give you the feeling you're doing something, but they are not really useful. So I think it's very important that we can collaborate with public health institutions in all countries. And even more than that, I think it should be really essential that we have a European collaboration. We have European ECDC, for example, which is the European Center for Disease Control, that has already issued guidelines, for example, for airway travel. And airlines have cooperated together with an alliance with ECDC to draft guidelines which help to organize the air travel. That's how they arrived to put some filters on the plane and to improve the ventilation on the planes. I think the same guidelines should be, to my sense, issued by ECDC jointly with such an alliance like you have here. And that would really help to build safe events without doing too much, because if you do too much, you don't have a rationale for that, and that's difficult to accept for many people. Some concerts, you have some also special public, some different publics that may not necessarily trust either the pandemic, the vaccine, there is a bit of doubt about that, and some of kind of the public which is listening to some of the concerts that were at the Rockhal, for example, they accepted the measures because they were reasonable and they were factual. They were based on facts and they were based on science. They were not just like beliefs or political measures. I think it's really important that we have medical, scientific, evidence-based measures.
So it's a matter of transparency. I'm hearing my echo in someone's microphone. Maybe if we could mute the mics. I'm so sorry, because otherwise I can't hear myself. Yeah, I think it's better. So, Dr. Vergison, you mentioned this idea of a European cooperation on issuing those guidelines. They exist for air travel. We should have them, as you say, also for live events. You heard this morning, or maybe you weren't with us yet, but this morning we talked about those measures for the Hockey Champions League, for the EuroLeague basketball, and obviously in many live music venues, they have prepared those guidelines. They are not too all-encompassing, and I think they're a way, that's what we heard this morning, to rebuild that trust and that confidence with the audiences. So this is definitely one of the next steps, if I understand correctly, that could be taken in order to restore that confidence, putting together a set of European public guidelines through the ECDC for live events. You agree with that?
I think, yes, definitely. That's really important that we have this joint and harmonized organization. And really, I insist that it should be evidence-based as much as possible.
Right.
And also in a really comprehensive way, and understanding that just culture and sport are also part of health. If you look at health, it's a global thing. I mean, it's really a concept of well-being. That's the definition, WHO definition of health, include a state of well-being. It's not only the absence of disease. And now we are addressing here with these events to people that are not really being badly diseased with the COVID, but they will prevent all the people that can die from the disease to be diseased. It's a bit different, but yet they will be diseased if they lack culture, if they lack sport, they will have mental problems. And we know that it is becoming an issue now. So I think it's really time to do something from a global health perspective.
Well, surely Lotte and Timo will agree with you. I mean, I'm seeing Lotte nod, but I will ask you to elaborate on that, Lotte. What do you take from Dr. Vergison's words?
No, I really like the perspective, because I think that culture and sport is actually part of a healthy society. And as John said before, we were the first ones to close down, and that was very easy because we have a legislation, at least in Sweden, that made it easy for the politicians. And we're probably going to be the last ones to open up. And I think that's, it's making it quite easy for the decision makers, because we've seen lots of people walking around in shopping malls and on the streets where you can have contagious situations, more or less, even more than you have in an arena I mean, we're used to working with security even in a, normal days, handling crowds and congestion and, all of that. So I really like the approach. I appreciate that approach.
Timo, would you elaborate on this? Do you have any thoughts on Dr. Vergison's suggestions to create that European framework of guidelines for live events?
Well, I can just sorry.
Agree.
No, it's a very, very good point, and it would be very helpful for every one of us, for the whole situation and for the whole of Europe to have one guideline. I mean, we're in Germany. We have the same thing, not just with Europe. We have with our 16 different countries. It's the thing what you want in big. We don't really have in small. So I can just say it is a great idea, and it would help the whole situation so much, and everyone could plan much better if they had a guideline which they can just say, okay, it's the same with us, and we can go to Luxembourg, or we can go to Austria and Switzerland. We know what to do, and we know what the guidelines are. So it would be much helpful for every one of us, for the whole culture and sports, and for the whole branch, I would say. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Safe to say you agree. Thank you so much, Timo, for your perspective from Germany. Evidence-based, factual guidelines. I will take that, from the first part of our conversation. This could be the framework that we could put in place collectively at European level in the coming weeks, just like the air transport sector did. So now another maybe topic, and also to echo Laurence Fahn's intervention earlier in the video, is this recovery, economic recovery, social recovery. We know, because we work in this sector, that the live event sector is crucial for the well-being of people, for the mental health of people, for also physical activities, for sports. But how do we make sure that society aligns with those priorities in terms of support, in terms of backing? So there is this flagging of 2% of the European Union's recovery and resilience facility that is in the joint resolution that was championed by Laurence Fahn, that was also, championed by our other guests at the European Parliament today, Ivan Garcia del Blanco, Dominique Ruiz de Besa. The Commission is really supporting it. We heard from Vivian Hoffman that they are really supporting this. The member states represented today by the Portuguese presidency also are trying to actively find solutions to coordinate this. So there will be support if, and that's an if the support is actually asked for by the sector. In the first panel, in the first conference, in December, the first leg, what we heard from many of our speakers was that there isn't enough lobbying done by the industry, the live events industry, on a regular basis. Not enough coordination at European level, at national level, to make the voice of live events heard. Lotta, this question is for you. Do you have the impression with events like this, with setups like this, that your voice is better heard lately?
Well, I think this is a very good example, us meeting here today. And as I said before, our sort of informal national network has just achieved that by getting together and joining the whole ecosystem in one voice. We also managed to draw the attention from the politicians. So we had regular meetings throughout December and January. And yesterday we got some good news from the government, sending out a referral when it comes to a strategy for gradually opening up and looking at indoor events with seated audience, outdoor events, and so forth. So I think that's very promising. And I mean, we're not really used to it to that extent, but we really depend on each other. So I think that's been a great benefit and something to take with us into the future as well. Because, I mean, we need a lot of support to overcome this bridge, this gap until we're back to normal. And I mean, we're quite safe because we're owned by the city of Gothenburg. But I need my colleagues in Malmö and Stockholm. You know, if we don't have the venues there, we won't be as attractive as a events country for shows and championships. And we need the promoters, we need the federations, and that goes for the whole of Europe. I mean, we're in this together. So speaking with a joint voice, I think that's the key to success, and I think we should continue that even in the future.
And I guess that's basically what all of our speakers are trying to do in events like this, speaking with a joint voice. Thank you so much, Lotta, because I think this really sets the tone of the Arena Resilience Alliance initiative. Back to you, Dr. Vergison. So after hearing from our speakers today, from Timo, from Lotta, also from the first panel, let's bring back just for a second the focus on well-being and health as a key priority for the future of the industry. Do you see, because you've supervised those concerts in Luxembourg, you've been really, close to the action, do you see any objective barriers that still prevent the live sectors, from the live music and live sports sectors, to consider soon bigger events with audiences who feel safe and who feel confident attending?
Well, I think there might be some barriers. I mean, and because we have still many unknowns. So definitely, when I hear people talking, I can hear that they have barriers. That's just a fact. The thing is how to overcome them and how to cope with them until the time we can get back to normal. I think the objective of the action is to be really clear. As was said before, as Timo said, we are organizing now events, or they are organizing now events which are not really for profit. And I think that's the key. The objective now is to make people understand that it is possible. The objective now, I think, for me, as I see that from a public health perspective, you need to reduce the density of people attending the events. That's a fact. Otherwise, you will never cope with the ventilation issue, for example. I think it will be really difficult. I'm really confident that we could organize events with more than 1,000 people indoor. I think that is feasible. But that's my personal feeling. I'm not talking as an official representative, but my feeling as participant to that and supervising that is that it is feasible. But the expectation in terms of profit should be really realistic. And the first objective should be to be back to bringing music to people, bringing events to people, and organizing them, and then going progressively back to normal. Because the things are evolving, we are getting the vaccines, we are getting better understanding of the disease, and we are getting natural immunity. So we will get rid of that one day. And so up to then, with the support of the financial support of public sector as well, also from the European Commission, from the national states, I think it should be possible and feasible to support the cultural sectors to get to that bigger events organization.
Well, that definitely sounds good. It's a reasonable approach. It's striking a balance between the necessity to have culture and sports in our life on the one hand, and on the other hand, safety, health, and managing expectations, managing confidence of the audiences. I think the sector has proven, through all the testimonies and, all the speeches that we heard today, that it's ready to embrace that balance. It's ready to embrace that compromise. And, honestly, hearing it as a moderator and hearing it from you, I also understand that from the point of view of public health authorities, this is the right approach. So I think we're kind of coming to some kind of common voice, common ground here. Back to you, Timo, because the clock is ticking, unfortunately, and I just wanted to hear also from you if there is something that we may have overlooked in this conversation from the point of view of promoters, from the point of view also of where you operate in Germany. Is there anything you would like to address?
Well, I don't think we have overlooked that much. it's very nice to hear and see all that working together, and all the people trying to get life back into the possible. Like I said earlier, I just think it's very important now that we make concrete plans for the future, and then we get concrete outlooks for the future, because it is not just us big companies or the promoters or the venues. It is all these self-employed people working in our branch. They don't know what's going to happen with them. They don't have the big financial support, and they're probably looking for other jobs, going into other professions and everything. And if they don't get a concrete outlook, and they don't know the plan, okay, by that time I'll go back to business, they'll probably leave the business. And we need those people to make culture, to make concerts, to make sports possible in the arenas. And if we don't get a plan, like we all know that the vaccine won't be here by tomorrow. We all know that not everyone will be vaccinated in like 1 or 2 months. And we all know that the virus won't disappear by itself. But we probably do know what happens in the next 5 or 6 or 7 months. And then we can say, okay, if we have the vaccine for everyone, we can open the concert halls in October, November. We can make the sport events happening. We can make the culture back to the people, open up back to the people. So this would be an outlook for all the people living in this branch and working for culture as well. And I think it's very important to also look at those people living within our branch, not just the promoters and venues. But as I can hear and as we can see, there is a lot of people working on it, and everyone is united. And I like the fact that we do look all over Europe, not just our own little country, and our possibilities. So yeah.
Right. Well, that's the idea of events like this one, I suppose, and initiatives like the Arena Resilience Alliance, to try to bring all the voices from all over Europe to try and find solutions altogether. We heard consistently today, many times, that this cooperation, this collaboration is key. We're all learning from each other, and definitely, I think, with events like this, it gives inspiration, not only for the industry side, but also for public authorities and decision makers. We heard a lot of MEPs getting inspired by everything that you are saying today. And I'm sure that this is in this constructive spirits that we'll all find a way out of this altogether. Okay, so I think that's our time today. Unless you want to add, maybe someone wants to add something, a last closing word. I'm looking at you, Lotte, looking at you, Dr. Vergison. No, that's a no. I take that as a no. So I just really wanted to thank you so much for this extremely interesting panel. I mean, I've learned a lot of things, and surely the one thing that we should all take from this is this European cooperation. Bringing this subject to the ECDC, definitely one of the ideas. Working together to lobby the European institutions in order to make the voice of the live event sector heard in the context of that recovery facility, that recovery funding package. That's another thing that should really be addressed, if I'm listening to you and MEP Farron. So thank you again to all our panelists for this second session. It was really a pleasure to be with you and to have this conversation with you today. So much to unpack from these two sessions. Again, I think our audience, our viewers today will be particularly impressed to witness such support for the Arena Resilience Alliance, not only from people in the sector, people in the live event sector, sports sector, music sector, but from so many decision makers, policy makers, members of the European Parliament, the European Commission, the Council of the EU, public health authorities as well. And to quote MEP Laurence Farron, who was with us through video message today, I think this confirms that the live event sector is one of the key components of not only Europe's economy, but also Europe's well-being, Europe's conviviality, Europe's mental health. And I think this message is very much a sign of hope for what's coming next. And you know what? We're not over for today, because we're reaching the last part of our event, which is going to be a fireside conversation with the two co-founders of the Arena Resilience Alliance, Olivier Todt and Robert Fitzpatrick, joined by the president of the European Arenas Association, John Langford. Welcome back, John, and welcome Olivier and Robert, who need no introduction, but I'll do it anyways. Olivier, you're the CEO of Rockhal. We heard a lot about the series of test concerts you organized last week. Thank you so much for being with us. Robert, you are the CEO of the Odyssey Trust Company in Belfast, co-founder of the ARA as well. Thank you so much for being with us. We're so glad to have you, Robert. About today, right? So much to learn, so much to discover, so much to discuss. The first leg of this event in December was about the why. This leg was about the how. So we sure heard, we did hear a lot of optimistic and combative words today, both from the industry and policy sides. So also, you know, in the context of this, the series of concerts that happened at Rockhal last week show definitely, you know, evidence-based, it's factual, that there is a path to making things happen. And this really echoes the optimism of all of our panelists today. The key word, as we said, is confidence. And I think, stop me if I'm wrong, that events like this and voices like the voices we've heard today are quite, you know, confident, maybe a bit more confident than December in the future. Robert, for instance, how do you feel after today?
Energized. I think that the work that we've all done has created a motion now that's going to be very hard to stop. I have to applaud my co-founder colleague in the work that he's done in actually constructing the factual delivery of content in many cases for the first time in Europe, that has allowed us to now start to measure and to have a health professional talk about evidence-based factual content, for me, is a tremendous success. I sort of, and you'll not be surprised, Fabian, to hear this from me. I mean, I suppose I sort of look at it as, you know, when we set out on this journey of why and how and all the rest, we essentially set out to try and climb Everest, and we're now at base camp. And we've established a very strong footing at base camp. And certainly from today, what has become very clear to me, that to get to the summit, there's two routes. There's a digital route and there's a sustainability route. And if we can integrate those into our thinking, then my view would be that that we're going to be able to make progress. Now, for me, the single biggest challenge that now exists is that we've got to start to put some meat on the bone around the collaboration piece. It's wonderful that we've been able to demonstrate a willingness from the EU to learn, but you more than any know that there's a special type of process that needs to be gone through to get them to listen within the context of them agreeing, and to not, in many respects, retreat back to, well, that's a 27th member nature, or that's a Brexit nature, or whatever the case may be. So from my perspective, you know, you've got 2 or 3 moves that you've got to make now to get to the summit. It's very clear from today, as far as I'm concerned, that the embracing of digital integration and sustainability matters that you could possibly link to already well-held European targets are the way to the summit. But what I would like to try and explore, and what I think we need to explore now, is an extension of the lobby activity, where we can go and look and see within the big pot of money, what have you put aside for compliance against your previously set targets? And can we take the 2 strands of digital and sustainability, and in some way, shape or form, get our arenas to embrace those and to get the EU to start to recognize that if the arenas are going to make investment in digital and investment in sustainable manners, that it's perfectly reasonable that instead of going with your hand out and asking for all the money, that you link what you're doing back to held targets and get some sort of structure where there's matched funding. Now, if that's agreeable, the second part then is it's down to the arena to comply with the process that's put in place. So if you can demonstrate your commitment to previously held EU expectations and EU targets, then there's a route to the summit. And we've heard very clearly today from certainly all of our political partners, that what they're looking for us to do is show them how we can now create that presence to be strong enough to have the conversation and to basically engage with them at their level, not at a national level, but at a distribution level. And the only language that they understand, and one of the things that Olivier and I started out in this process was, this was never about a money ask. This was about them getting to recognize that all of the work that they've done with Creative Europe and Music Moves Europe and all the rest is fabulous. But we're the hub. We're the infrastructure. If we don't exist, they've nowhere to play. The bands don't play if the bricks and mortar aren't there. And regrettably, the bricks and mortar are the most expensive and are the venues that have hurt the most right through this process. Now, I'm not looking at a hierarchy of pain, but what I am saying is that, in 2011, when the EAA was 20 years old, there was a set level of engagement with membership and all the rest. 10 years later, that's exploded. And then it stopped. So we've got to find a way, in my opinion now, to take all of the good stuff that's been done today. The EU essentially have opened the door and says, come in. Now, how do we get in? And when I say how do we get in, how do we take health, operations, and wellness and put them all together so that the conversation that we next have with the Cult Committee is where they see us as an informed body with an expanse where we can talk across the sector of Europe about how we're going to address the targets that they've set to hit sustainability and digital matters. So that's broadly, not a big ask, but there you go.
Yeah, as you said, Robert, I think this initiative that started a few months ago now has already achieved a lot in terms of raising awareness at EU level. And as you say, now it's a matter of finding the right tools to build a case, a comprehensive, coherent case, in order to create that long-lasting relationship with policymakers, build that framework where arenas are considered as, central players in that ecosystem in terms of their impact and in terms of their activity in society. So what toolbox have we been hearing about today? A lot of things about, and you said it, Robert, technology, sustainability, readiness, health guidelines. But in terms of advocacy, Olivier, I think, the work of ARA, the Arena Resilience Alliance, is not over, as we've discussed before this fireside chat, you and I. I think ARA is about to take another step forward in this endeavor. Maybe you've got something to tell us.
Yes, absolutely. And, there are some keywords that I heard throughout the whole discussion today. The one is the strong voice. It's also the collaboration between different players. And Robert has mentioned the Cult Committee, which obviously links to the strong voice of an organization. At the same time, we've heard from Dr. Vergisson, the ECDC, discussion that will need to be addressed. So in order to get this moving and to move to the next level and take the next step, we decided as the Arena Resilience Alliance to launch a manifesto that we have titled Rationale for Resilient Return. And this one centers around 4 core concepts. The one is the creation of an advisory body. The ARA proposes the creation of an advisory body that will work in tandem with European political interest groups to guide and instruct on the workings of the live events ecosystem and maximizes resource for an effective return of our industry. The second part is we ask for a hub for return and for change. Robert has mentioned the image of the hub that the arena is. So through the extensive network of large capacity arenas across Europe that would be affiliated either to EAA or represented by ARA and discussions like the ones that we're having today, well, those arenas can offer a hub for the renewal of the music and sporting industries. The venue provides the physical space for all the different elements that make up live events and its ecosystem. It's a space for practice, it's a space for collaboration, for communities, for medically conditioned tests that will measure the feasibility and act as a catalyst for the return of our fan-attended events. Third, adapting for the future of live events. We're ready as ARA to lead the discussion on the need for arenas to provide the physical space for the development of new and environmentally sustainable and digital practices within the context of the provision of community-based and fan-based group gatherings. Fourth, last but not least, we need a safe and sustainable post-COVID-19 ecosystem. The Manifesto, rationale for resilient return, has been prepared to face a critical moment for the events industry. We must embrace the opportunity to get arenas back to working for our communities. We must preserve the key elements of Europe's cultural identity by bringing back live music and sporting events. We must bring the different parts of the ecosystem together to create safer, greener, and more efficient environments where European citizens can meet and they relax, socialize, and enjoy themselves as at these events. So those are the 4 points that we elaborated and wanted to present, because that's going to lead us to the next step and in those discussions.
Well, thank you so much, Olivier, for presenting those first articles of the manifesto of the Arena Resilience Alliance. So I understand it is being launched as we speak. This is a document that I'm sure will be available through ARA's various channels, and definitely something that, if I understand you and Robert, will be the backbone of the next steps of your advocacy to the European Union, to national governments, also to your collaboration with other initiatives in the field of live events or in the field of culture, with the objective, stop me if I'm wrong again, to becoming that hub, that voice that rallies the ecosystem around a positive, resilient, confident message.
Absolutely, and I think it's that collaboration part that's really important. It's solidarity, and we've heard it also today, which is really an important component of the action that we're doing.
Right. Well, that's fantastic news, and congratulations to the ARA for this launch. I'm now turning to you, John. Welcome back. John, it's safe to say that this initiative, this campaign, call it whatever you want, is met with a certain enthusiasm. We have heard from various European institutions. The sector seems responsive. So what's the future for the EAA, the European Arenas Association, in this context? I guess you will agree with Robert and Olivier that there is a need for that united, strong voice for the industry. As president of the European Arenas Association, what's next?
I always feel to understand the future, you need to reflect on the past. And I'm a great fan of Stephen Covey, the management consultant and author, and he talks about spheres of influence and spheres of control. And as an industry, as I said in the opening talk today, we've always been good at managing those things within our control, but we've never been good at influencing those things beyond our control. And if anything for me has happened through COVID that has been a massive opportunity and learning for our sector, is we've got together. And all of the members of the Arena Resilience Alliance and within our sector that have spoken today have spoken about this. So Lotta was talking about how they got together in Scandinavia and in Sweden. The Arena Resilience Alliance was about getting together to face a common enemy, COVID in this case. And the European Arenas Association partnered with other arenas, sports franchises, associations, so that we could together work on influencing those things beyond our control. And I think it's been hugely successful. And, you know, I want to pay particular kudos to Olivier and Robert for leading the charge in this on behalf of the EAA. And what we've learned from this is that we can be unified, we can do things together, we may be competitors at times, but we can come together and we can rally around a central call. I call it co-opetition. And we've certainly demonstrated that with the ARA. And I think going forward, what this means for us is that there is now another strand to what we can do. You know, when I took over as president of the EAA, you know, coming up for 18 months ago, I was talking about digital and sustainability, but we weren't really talking about advocacy and lobbying because we hadn't had a need for it. And we recognized that there is a need for it within our sector. And we've also shown, and we've seen it today, how successful we can be when we come together. So I see advocacy and lobbying being critical going forward for COVID and beyond COVID. You know, there are going to be so many other issues that we would have not advocated or lobbied about previously, which we now know that we can. How do we do that? I think, you know, a lot of this has been touched on today, but, you know, the policy makers that spoke today mentioned specifically digital and sustainability. And I've got to reiterate that is a pathway that we absolutely have to capitalize on.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, it's true that, I mean, if you look at the conversation in Brussels in the last few months, you know, all that talk about the recovery facility, the recovery economic package, it's true that one of the two major themes, major topics are this digital recovery and this sustainable, environmentally sustainable recovery. So as arenas, as real estate operators, so to say, there's so much I think you can advocate to the European Union to build a case, not only just now through the crisis, but also in the long run, because those two topics really, they strike a chord in Brussels. Robert, just a quick word to echo what John said. Do you agree that you're on a good path to
there were
lobbying activities in the future?
Well, I mean, you know, John and I know each other a long time, and we've always been of the one mind when it comes to how we get things done. We might do them differently, and we as John has alluded, he's very learned in his process and how he does things. I'm maybe not as learned in that process, but we always meet in the middle and get things done. The reality for me for today is that I heard two words that need to be introduced into all of our thinkings. Alex, who I thought was superb, talked about the whole offset of insurance and liabilities for sports teams. Now, if you just hold that for a moment and then think about the fact that even now, after all of the learning we've done and the reality that we have that we need to make investments to make our hubs safer and that the ecosystem need to come back within a safer hub, but actually, we have yet to confront the single biggest problem the industry presents itself, which is that every promoter in Europe is a single point of failure. Because if they don't have the wherewithal to take risk, or they don't have the plan to take risk, you're going to have empty buildings and frustrated bands. Because within the ecosystem, nobody takes that type of risk. Band and the arena always get paid. Now, notwithstanding that and the fact that it's been in some way shape frustrated by the whole debate around Brexit and Schengen and travel across borders and touring and all of that good thing, what's very clear to me today is that it's already on the agenda of promoters and it's already on the agenda of sports anchors. Some sports anchors, like the one I have in Belfast, will play 38, 40 times a year. That's 40 times a year of guaranteed food and beverage sales, guaranteed car park sales, blah, 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 blah. Now, if they're starting to show those issues, our association and our connectivity across our association needs to be strong enough to absorb those into our lobby. I completely agree with John there are going to be, coming out of this process of climbing Everest, you know, a couple of avalanches and a couple of snow rolls, and we're going to have to be able to take them in. Because if we're arguing that we're the hub, we have to also be seen as a solution. And for me, that's the challenge that all of us, the three of us, need to now start to reflect on. That's about talking with the massive global players and saying to them, where is the common ground? Where is the common ground from a policy piece where we help each other? Where is the common ground from an activity piece where we're all arguing as one? And it seems to me that the easiest and smartest way to do that right now in a pandemic is to go after a target-based argument. There's the target you've set that you want sustainable practice to be by 2030. Here's a tool that we can present that will allow you to get there quicker than you would have thought. And more importantly, it's coming with an investment proposal that you only have to match. That seems to me to be the next direction of travel. Now, Olivier has announced the manifesto, so we now have to knit together all of the comments that have been made over both webinars and go into a cult committee and say, here's the proposition. We've got the manifesto, we've had the accolades and the nice words spoke. Now we have to go in with a proposition that allows us to go to the summit and take in the avalanches.
Thank you so much, Robert. I think Olivier is going to agree, obviously, with that Everest metaphor. So, Olivier, from your perspective as a co-founder of the Arena Resilience Alliance, this is kind of a bonus question. You're at base camp now, if we follow that climbing metaphor. But base camp looks quite cozy. I mean, it's already 2 resolutions from the European Parliament, support from multiple members of the European Parliament, from multiple political groups, from the cultural, creative sectors, friendship group. Also, you know, nice messages from the European Commission, from the European presidency of the, from the Portuguese presidency of the European Union, and I think more importantly, all that community and all that ecosystem coming together for events like this to work together, basically, to find solutions. So surely, Olivier, there is appetite to continue in the next couple of weeks to bang that drum. Will we see you at ILMC, for instance?
How did you know? So that was a very lucky guess, indeed. And I mean, I'll start before that, because obviously, and I said it before, we're taking this step by step, and we try to climb, you know, that to that Everest, you know, top. So it's definitely, we will be going forward, even, you know, making the ties with science and the political world stronger as we can, built on facts, built on experience that we can make together, and build trust in each other. And then, obviously, in 2 weeks' time, we will be presenting some more about the upcoming activities at the ILMC. So I'd like to give, you know, to set the rendezvous for the 3rd of March at 1:30 UK time, or 2:30 Central European time, where we're going to take an hour to speak about ARA, about what got us there, and hopefully we'll also be able to bring on some additional, not only footage, but some additional learnings about the Luxembourg shows that we've been able to host and that were discussed broadly this afternoon. Most importantly, it's going to be a good opportunity to reach out to and be collaborative, as we've said on many occasions. And as I said before, we're in it together. It's a piece of solidarity. It's the hub picture that Robert has been describing, and we believe it's really important that that conversation that will lead to an effective lobbying work will start as we speak today, and will lead into the ILMC. We'll be there to all kinds of conversations, questions, and comments from all the stakeholders in our industry. and are then positive to take it forward to the next steps.
Oh, that definitely sounds exciting, Olivier. And I'm sure many of our viewers today will also be participating in ILMC. So it's going to be a good way to continue this conversation and to hear more about that coordination between arenas, public health authorities, political institutions such as the European Parliament, and so many other things that are already, moving forward and quite at a quite intense pace right now. John, famous last words, maybe from the president.
Well, maybe not famous, but just to reiterate again, you can't climb Everest on your own easily. You do it much better as a team, and if you rope to other people. And we cannot do it as an insular organization as the EAA or as the ARA. We need to do it as with open dialogue and working together. And I hope to see a lot more of that as we tackle the COVID challenge in recovery, but also resilience in general for our sector, and because I'm biased for arenas in particular.
I couldn't think of better closing words for this event. Thank you so much, John. This is such an optimistic message and such a breath of confidence that is so needed right now for everybody. We're all together in this, as you say. We'll leave our viewers with your words, John, with also this invitation to ILMC, obviously with the launch of the Arena Resilience Alliance Manifesto that will be available on the European Arenas Association website very soon. And really with this happy feeling, I would say, after hearing from all of our brilliant speakers today. So I would just really want to thank all the speakers who joined us, who participated, who gave their time and their energy for this event. It was really brilliant. We learned a lot. We worked together a lot today, and I think this is definitely the way forward. So I will leave you with this. I am Fabien Miclet. It was a pleasure to be with you today, and see you very soon, and stay safe.